Hello, I'm Ariel Kroon.
And I'm Christina de la Rocha. Welcome to Season 3 of Solarpunk Presents,
the podcast introducing you to the people working today to create a future we'd like to live in.
Because
if Solarpunk as a genre of fiction dreams about the just and sustainable world we'd like to live in the future,
Solarpunk as a movement rolls up its sleeves and gets down to the business of bringing it about in the present. Back in April, I sat down and talked to Cin-Ty Lee, a professor of geology from Rice University in Texas. Cin-Ty studies the evolution of the Earth through time from a geological and geochemical perspective, and he has an amazing soft spot for birds. So we talked about birdwatching. Turns out it's kind of a gateway to environmental activism. So I hope you enjoy our conversation. But before we continue, Ariel would like to break in to say,
we're a two-person operation, and we need your support to keep making Solarpunk content. If you like what we do, please consider supporting the podcast over at our Patreon at www.patreon.com/solarpunkpresents. There are a few different tiers for subscribers who get early access to episodes as well as bonus content written by myself and Christina. Consider rating and reviewing us as well and sharing this episode with your friends and people who might be interested in the podcast. Thank you for supporting the Solarpunk community. Now, on to the episode.
Hi, Cin-Ty.
Hey, Christina. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking to you today. And you're a professor of earth sciences.
So I'm at Rice, and I do research on geology, and I teach geology. And I love mostly what I do. I love teaching, and I really do like the geology, but I also have this side passion that's kind of consumed a lot of my life. It's about birds, and I've been doing that since I've been a kid. I almost went into that profession, but I think everyone told me I couldn't make a living off of birds, so I went to become a geologist, and that wasn't that much different.
Rocks don't sing, though.
Rocks don't sing, and but for me, I like going out to the field. We collect rocks. In my profession, I try to tell the story of the Earth through rocks, the record that rocks hold. And so that gets me out in the field to collect rocks, to observe how the rocks are laid down, their structures, and then reconstruct the story. But while you're out there in the field, you can't help but look at everything else besides just the rocks. So there's the plants, there's the birds, the insects, and birds, of course, so photogenic and really easy to kind of fall in love with them. So I guess that's why I kind of like birds. It just happened naturally. In fact, a lot of geologists are bird watchers, and so I'm sort of no different in that.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that, actually. I haven't gone out in the field very often, so...
okay.
What was I going to say? I actually did once meet a professional bird watcher.
Oh, really? Okay.
Once, yeah. Where I used to live, just a couple of miles away from here. So I live in the state of Schleswig-Holstein, which is the northernmost state of Germany. And we have the state's only, I think it's called a northern dipper. Does that sound about right? Actually, it's the white-throated dipper, also known as the European dipper, or just the dipper.
Yeah, I don't know Germany very well, but yeah, there's dippers up there, special birds.
Well, there's one, and she was female, and she lived in a little stream by this house I used to live in. There was next to suburbia, there was this little ravine that was a little bit wild. It had a river running through it. This bird watcher spent all winter there with a telescope and a camera, protecting this bird.
Oh, really? Wow.
He was a very strange fellow, actually. You did not want to mess with him, but yeah, I don't know what he did during the summer, but during the winter, he was this protector of this bird.
Yeah, some of us definitely are pretty protective of our birds. I guess I have to admit I'm a little bit like that as well. Not so much as I'll sit and guard the bird, but protect the habitats and really try to take care of the the environment there. And when I see it being threatened or damaged, I kind of want to take action to fix it or to protect it for sure.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's important, isn't it? And you're under a major flyway, aren't you? Where you are.
Yeah, so so I'm at Rice University, which is in Houston, Texas, and it's one of the major flyways for birds. And I think part of it is because it's I guess the Mississippi River isn't too far from us, and so some birds will go up the Mississippi River, and then a lot of birds will cross the Gulf of Mexico in the spring from Yucatan and take those tailwinds right about now, actually, and head out north. And those tailwinds kind of take you right up through the Louisiana-Texas border, and that's where we are. So they come up this way, and so actually, one of my missions at Rice is we have a little spot. It's called Harris Gully. To the untrained eye, if you walked by it, you might think it's just like a vacant lot. But to students of sort of nature, you walk in and it's like paradise. There are all these different plants there. There are trees and grasses and flowers. And if you look a little more closely, you find all these insects, 800 species of insects, and then you have the birds. And today we had 81 species of birds we detected, which is truly remarkable. And all of this we're surrounded by buildings on all sides. It's Houston, fourth largest city in the U.S. And these little green spots are stopovers, rest stops, I guess, for birds on their long journey of migration from the equatorial regions all the way to the Arctic, or at least the boreal area. And so as population expands, or even without population expansion, we get the development and knocking out all the native habitat that used to be here. These birds have been going up and down for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. And then all of a sudden, this short time, humans come in and we destroy everything. And so now these little green spots mean more and more, are more important than ever before. And so I've been trying to make those spots as good as they can be. And with that, it's about ecological health, and making sure you have enough biodiversity, enough complexity within the ecosystem structure, so that you have all these different niches that the birds have to, or microhabitats the birds need. So that's what I like to do. Even though I'm a geologist, this is sort of my mission, and on the side, and it's for me, it's a little bit of an escape from the general work that I do, and then it's also, I found it to be such a special way to get people to know more about the earth, more about science, more about nature, when maybe they didn't have that background. But it's so easy to get into birds. You can enjoy it. They're pretty. You get trapped into it, and before you know it, you're doing a little science here and there, contributing to science, even though most of the folks doing this are not scientists by training. There could be anybody out there. And the diversity of people we've got involved in this is just amazing. All types of demographics. I'm so happy about that. And I've met so many people and so forth. But anyway, yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. Yeah, you lead tours and trips on the side. So
yeah, I do lead some trips. It's all mainly for charity or fundraising. I don't get any pay for that. I don't want to take any pay for those sorts of things. So, those that we do take fees, those fees go straight to supporting. Here, there's this place called the Nature Discovery Center, which its mission is about educating youth, the kids in nature. And so all the money goes into their summer camps and programs, or after school programs.
So birding is actually hard work if you get really into it. I mean, you have a lot to study and learn, and because you know all these birds off the top of your head, you know the subtle differences in the shading or the coloration or whatever the terms are.
Yeah.
You know what they sound like, and it really takes a lifetime to master this. I mean, there should be like black belts in birding and stuff like that.
Well, there are certainly, I've been doing it for a lifetime, and certainly you have people who can be very, very experienced, but to get into it is not that difficult, especially now with so many apps that the entry level is decreased, and I think that's a great thing because just anyone can get in, and once you get in, although it sounds, when new people start, they think, how is it that you know all these calls? How can you remember all these birds? And yeah, I've been doing it for a while, but I've mentored so many people and I've seen them where they come in and then within 2 years, they're pretty darn good. And it's not so much that, you have to know every bird. It's about really enjoying it out there. And when you start looking at birds, you start to see your surroundings and hear your surroundings a little more, become more observant, and it takes you to places that you otherwise wouldn't go. And so it changes a lot of people's lives. And gosh, this Sunday, I'm going to go to church. I'm not a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person, and it's an Episcopalian church where right after the service, I'm going to give a little, I don't know, a discussion or a presentation on birds or environmental awareness and sort of healing and spirituality. I think it should be accessible to all, and you don't have to become an expert. You just have to be able to enjoy, and that's easy, and it's great. Yeah. So I've seen the psychological effects of birds or just nature in general on people, and how it helps you recover from trauma or some hardships, and it's just amazing.
So it's not mainly about going out there and checking a bird off your list, but it's about going out, spending time listening to the wind blow and watching the birds and really watching them and how they behave and what they're like and what they do. And is that right?
I think so. I mean, there are all different types and levels of people interested in birds, and certainly there is a part of me that, particularly when I was younger, I suppose, that very competitive edge where you're out to get out as many birds as you can. As you'd run these big days where in 24 hours you try to see as many birds as you can, and you want to beat the last record as far as you can. And in fact, we still try to do that every once in a while. But I've toned down on that and really take it more slowly now, and just go out and use it as a way to connect with nature. And these birds are tuned to the rhythms of our planet. Our planet's rhythms, its climactic rhythms, are, as you know, obviously more than I do. But for the listeners, I guess the orbital dynamics, or the controlling of the seasons, or and the tilt of the Earth, all of that, and then the seasons control how much sun gets to the poles, and how much sun controls the amounts of energy and the amount of food, and just this complete cascade all the way to the birds, and the birds follow that. And so when you watch the birds and you see, well, when the swallows come back or when the orioles come back, it's telling you it's following the rhythms of the planet. But it's a visible thing. A lot of things in geology, when I talk to someone who's not a geologist, it seems somewhat abstract, and they think I'm talking about real technical stuff. But if I talk to them about birds, then it's a lot, I think, easier to communicate with everyone. Almost nobody doesn't like birds. So maybe there's some people that don't like the geese at the parks that chase them
they are
when they were
messy.
kids.
Oh, they are messy. Yeah,
right.
I got attacked by a duck once on a geology field trip. Like the only biologist on the geology field trip gets attacked by the duck. It was very embarrassing, you know. And you're also like, it hurts, but you can't kick them because you would kill them if you,
No, yeah.
you know.
You can't kick them. It would also look bad if you kick them. So you just have to take it.
But yeah, our swallows came back 3 days ago. We're very happy about that. It's a bit late this year because it's still a bit too cold here and gray,
Well,
and there's
see,
not many
there you go.
insects.
They come back usually on schedule. You know, it could be plus or minus a week or so, but they're loyal to that. They come back to the same place. It's a
Yeah,
mysterious thing that they do, and then you know, like today we saw this mass migration of birds just on our campus, and I made the comment to one of the colleagues that was out there looking at birds that, you know, this has been going on for millions of years, and statistically, a human life, you've got about 70 of these to witness.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
less because as you get older, you can't see it here. But so
yeah. No,
it's
that
a
must be
reminder
amazing.
of how finite our time is on this planet, how small we are.
Yeah, and birds are totally different than mammals. So I have chickens, and they live in the moment, right? They're never like, oh, the weather's so horrible, we're just gonna wait for tomorrow, you know? No. They're just always out there, and they just don't seem to think, oh God, why can't it stop raining? You know, they're just there doing their thing.
The birds will they do their thing. They come out. I mean, they do hide a little bit in the rain. I was just one of my students was trying to do a ride from Houston to Austin, which I think is like 200 miles or so,
Okay,
a
on a
bike ride.
bicycle. Okay.
Yeah, on a bicycle. And so, of course, he was telling me they have to pick the right day so that
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to ride in the headwind.
Mm-hmm.
They ride with the tailwind. And so he was watching all the weather, and I was laughing because I watched that weather like a hawk at this time because the birds follow that. The birds don't want to fly in the headwind
Okay.
either. So they say you think just like the birds. So
Well, you know, birds are not stupid. So I had one spring there was a sudden cold snap, and there was some European blackbirds who must have abandoned their nest, and they threw out a freshly hatched chick. And I found it.
oh,
I must have found it within about an hour. I mean, because it
uh-huh,
was freezing. It was freezing out.
uh-huh.
And we brought it inside and we put it on the heater, and an hour later it was moving again. So we're like, okay, we gotta take care of this thing. And so we went out and bought heat lamps and made a little nest, and got some mealworms, and I boiled lots of eggs and fed it cat food and stuff like that, and just had this thing in my house for like 3 weeks. And it's amazing once it gets to the point where it's hopping. So you get it out of the nest and it starts hopping on the floor, and it teaches itself everything,
Oh
right?
yeah.
It's like totally, it's, I don't know if it's form and function or if it's just kind of somehow programmed, but you know, you get it out on the floor and it has to hop, and then it's like, whoa, I'm standing. And then it hops to kind of catch its balance, and then it realizes, oh, I can hop. And then it practices. It just hops and hops and hops and hops and hops. And then it starts using its wings to help itself balance. And then it realizes, wait, I've got something here. I can like lift myself up a little bit. And then it practices hopping with its wings. And then it practices flying. And then, I mean, it's just amazing. And then at some point you have to put it outside because it's just smashing into the windows. Also, they poop
Yeah,
everywhere. It's unbelievable.
yeah.
That carpet, I've shampooed it like 3 or 4 times. It has never recovered from the
Just
bird
recover.
incident.
Okay.
uh, but then you put it outside, and then you're like, okay, I got to teach this thing to eat. And what happens is you're like, oh, all the insects are going to be under the rocks. So you turn over the rock, and then the bird's like, and then you convince the bird, like, you got to put this in your mouth. And it catches on pretty fast. But then what it realizes is that your job is to turn over rocks.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Right? So it's like in the end, this little 3 week or 4 week old bird teaches you that when you come out, your job is to turn the rock over so it can eat all the insects underneath. I mean, it's just amazing. Anyways, and then after, I think I had it for I don't remember how long it was outside, a week or two. And then it left me and I'll never see it again. It was a great bird. Unfortunately, it's probably imprinted on people now. But it's probably dead by now because in the wild, they only live 3 to 5 years. So yeah, I'll never know though. That's the weird thing.
You never know. We had you know how owls, when they eat, they don't chew, or birds don't chew, they just swallow, but they regurgitate all the undigestible stuff, the hair and the bones, and they shoot it out to their mouth as a pellet.
Yeah, my neighbor is an artist, and she collects those.
Oh, really?
She's got a whole collection of these.
What does she do with them?
I don't know. She just keeps them.
Oh, okay.
Occasionally shows them to people. I mean, they're interesting. It's kind of
really fascinating. Yeah, so my kid would go out and pick these up, and then he found, when he opened one up, a tibia with a bird band on it. So this owl, great horned owl, big giant owl, had eaten a bird. And we just had the tibia, so I couldn't tell what it was. But the band, you can then take those codes and report it to the USGS, and they'll come back and give you a certificate and tell you all about that bird. And it turned out.
Hang on, the USGS, the U.S. Geologic Survey, keep track of birds.
Yes, well, so it used to be, I think, in parallel with the USGS, there was something like the National Biological Survey in the U.S. And then I don't know when, maybe about 20 years ago, they merged. So a good chunk of the USGS is all about biology or ecology, just keeping track of our biodiversity.
Oh, that's amazing.
So they managed a lot of the banding database, and then a lot of the banding goes on, I think, to study West Nile virus. Anyway, this bird was a blue jay, and it had been banded for that purpose in Houston, about a mile away from where we found this, and it was 17 years old.
Wow. That's impressive.
And that's in the wild, in urban Houston. And we have hawks, we have cars, you can crash into buildings. It lasted 17 years only to be eaten alive by an owl.
Well, but this is nature, right? When you think about it. So we have all these birdhouses that get filled by house sparrows, and it's really every nesting box gets filled by a sparrow. It's crazy, but you see them. They've already hatched the first set of chicks for this year, and they'll keep going until August. So they'll have at least 3 clutches. And each one of those will have at least 3 chicks in it. And then you think about, I don't know how long a typical house sparrow lives, but presumably 2 or 3 years. So when you add that up, you're like, okay, then in principle, then they could have, what is that then? Maybe 9 or, 16 or whatever offspring.
Yeah, they can make a lot. The population can grow.
Oh, Christina. That's 9 per year. If they have 3 eggs per clutch, say, and have 3 clutches per year. So if they live to be about 3 years on average, something like that, then that's 27 birds that they produce, not 9. I should also say, I'm not quoting any statistics here, any real, actual measured statistics, and kind of the average number of sparrow eggs per clutch and clutches per year really varies a lot as you move from the tropics to higher latitudes. So take these numbers with a grain of salt, as an example only of, not survival of the fittest, but also that most things are born to die to feed something else. And all they have to do is have 2 of those chicks survive to adulthood and start, and then raise their own families. Yeah. If you're maintaining a steady population.
That's right. Yeah.
Everybody else has to get eaten as a baby. Right? So most of life is really just producing offspring to feed into the food web. And this is the truth of natural selection, right? Everyone's
that's right. Yeah.
It's almost everything has to die young.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's okay, and that's amazing. That is just, it's so incomprehensible. It is so, like, as a as a civilized person, it just feels so brutal and so wrong. And just, yeah, I mean, can you imagine that can you imagine
nature.
Yeah.
But I guess humans, we, at least today, we have somehow violated that. We live much longer. I mean, if I look at myself, my eyesight is so bad. I probably 1,000 years ago probably wouldn't have made it beyond like 30 years, something like that.
Who knows?
Anything, right?
I was born a month early. I might not have made it to one, to 1 month or whatever. I mean, who knows? I was really small, but other than that, I was all right. But still, it's crazy. Most of us, like 80% of us would have died very young.
Probably, or taken out by some disease.
So
we've kind of gone beyond that, or violated natural selection.
Well, we've appropriated so much of the earth in order to do that, and we've taken all this energy out of the ground, stolen all this photosynthesis from the past, essentially. And
I like how you say that, stolen the photosynthesis of the past.
Yeah, but that's what it is, right? So all this energy that was captured by plants from the sun, and it was just hiding in the ground. So it's just amazing. I mean, so when you so sometimes I think about what if, science fiction thing here, if we had a big apocalypse or whatever, and civilization crashed and people had to start over from, not from scratch, but pretty close to it. How would society evolve if you don't have this storehouse of fossil fuels? Because we use so much of it up. You'd have this completely different trajectory of the reestablishment of civilization, especially if you've forgotten how to do everything and couldn't make solar panels or whatever.
Yeah, sure. If we really forgot, I think it'd be pretty tough.
Well, but you definitely couldn't follow the same path, because you don't have the fossil fuel so much anymore, right? Okay, you have some left, but
I mean, you would not, all the easy stuff, the easy oil, I guess, has already been tapped, so you wouldn't be able to, if we lost all our technology or our know-how, we would not be able to go the same path.
It'd be really hard to make.
Maybe we'd reach a different steady state at a much smaller population,
and there'd be more birds.
And there would definitely be more birds.
And more insects. I mean, sometimes I always wonder what things look like before we chopped everything down and covered it in concrete or whatever. Like here where I live, I presume it used, so we're on basically on we're at the edge of the ice sheet here. So we're all on till. I mean, we're on like 100 meters of clay or something like that where I live. And around us, again, there's a lot of these like rolling hills and these little glacial lakes and stuff like that. But I think this whole area must have used to be swamp, essentially, or bog, or moor, or whatever the right term is. And, it's all been drained. So much of Northern Europe has had all the water drained out of it so it can be turned into farmland. And I just cannot even imagine what this might. I mean, there used to probably were an awful lot more insects than there are now. Never mind all the other stuff, and probably a lot more birds. I
think humans have fundamentally altered the landscape directly and indirectly across the whole, certainly the terrestrial part. The rivers we've dammed, or we've channelized. We've drained areas to make to turn swamps into arable land. We've changed so much. The coastlines are completely changed. I don't know what the number is, but I'm sure easily 75% of the original estuaries in, say, along the Gulf of Mexico are gone, or transformed into something fundamentally different than they used to be. Or like beavers,
except beavers create habitat for other things, or
well, I mean, you could say we create habitat, whether it's necessarily good habitat, I don't know. We certainly create habitats for cockroaches and rats.
Oh my God, we have so many rats here. It's not even funny.
So yeah, the landscape has changed, and
so you've probably
yeah.
actually also seen this a bit because you grew up in Riverside, California.
I did, yes,
And
and not
I
too far
bet,
from where you grew up, right?
but I've actually never been to Riverside. I'm really embarrassed to
Nobody's
say
been to
that.
Rivers. Nobody goes to Rivers. Well, maybe now they do, but back when I was growing up, nobody wanted to go to Riverside, or if they did, they were embarrassed to tell anybody.
Why is
Um,
that?
well, I think all the cool areas were like the coast, right? Riverside was supposed to be in the Inland Empire and 1 hour away from all the great things. But but I enjoyed Riverside. It's like kind of a acquired taste, I guess.
Well, but
Um,
I'm guessing this is how you got into birding because
I
it
had
wasn't a
nothing
concrete
to
jungle.
do.
No?
Well, that's right. That's right. It wasn't yet at the time, and where we lived, well, actually, when I grew up was on the outskirts of Riverside, and we had the orange grove, and so we were kind of in the countryside anyway, and so that's where I first was exposed, and then we moved into the city, but even then, within a mile, I could walk to the mountain. Now, the mountain was coastal sage scrub, and of the type that wasn't like where I think were you in Santa Barbara or
No, I grew up in Torrance.
okay, Torrance.
And talk about not cool.
Yeah, but the coastal sage there is a little healthier, and you get out to Riverside, it's like somewhere between nice coastal sage scrub and desert. So for the untrained eye, it just looks like a wasteland. This is where you dump stuff, but it's a special spot. But yeah, I had access to that and I could see it. But yeah, you asked, I think that's where you're going, whether I'd seen changes. Certainly now when I go back to that area, right, you have the urban sprawl from Los Angeles. People can't afford to live in Los Angeles, so they start to move out east and they live out there and then commute,
Oh, that's
awful
crazy.
long hours. And then, so that's the first changes we saw, just so much sprawl. And then now what's really happened, which is really sad actually, is these massive warehouses, distribution warehouses for Amazon and other companies, just covering that area. And the reason why I think they centered around that area is because like in Ontario, which is not too far from Riverside, you have that airport.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Riverside, you had the Air Force Base that has now been kind of redesigned to do more civilian stuff and really sending out like FedEx and Amazon planes. And so all around there, which used to be just open fields, you could just see for miles and miles and miles, unobstructed fields. This is where birds like the mountain plover, which are threatened now, would come down from north central United States and winter there. Now we don't see them at all. There's nowhere for them to go. And some of these buildings, I don't know, they're just huge.
Yeah.
I think they're even a mile or two long themselves.
Yeah,
so
no,
it's all gone.
Yeah, it must fill you with rage.
I don't know about rage, more sadness. I mean, I'm part of the problem. We all are part of the problem. The convenience that we take for granted of being able to get what we want just like that, with a click of order, and it comes. It's because these distribution centers are everywhere, and the carbon footprints of all of these is huge, and the shipping, right?
We're all part of the problem, and yet how can you live in this society and not be a part of the problem? Is there a way? I'm not even sure there's a way not to be a part of the problem.
Well, I mean, yeah, right. I think one can take it in different ways. I mean, the problem is just humans. If we just disappeared tomorrow, everything would be probably just fine. But obviously, that's not what we want to do, and we want to still be able to live comfortably. And I don't think that's not a bad thing, that we want to live and be comfortable and have peace, world peace, and we want people to live with not starving and with good health. And the fact is that requires tapping the resources of our planet in all different ways. And so I guess that comes back to the word sustainability, which I think a lot of people don't, or maybe people have different definitions of sustainability. I see it as that it's inevitable we're going to have to live as a society. We're going to have to grow, I'm not sure. I personally think we should grow, but most countries want to grow, certainly grow their GDP, bring up the living standards of everyone. And if we want to do that, which is not necessarily a bad thing, we have to accept that we will impact the environment and our resources. So how do we do that? I suppose how do we grow or stay strong without really hurting the environment? I don't have an answer if that's what you're looking for, because if I did, I'd have solved it by now. But I do think about it almost every day, actually.
Mm-hmm. And do you get anywhere with thoughts like that?
Well, I can't say I have solved anything, but going back to how we started, when I look at Houston, I look at where I live and where we already built everything, but then I see this place I call Harris Gully, this little natural spot, and I accept that we're going to have all these buildings. People have to live in houses, people have to work in buildings, and so forth. I accept that, but I can see that we can preserve what habitat remains. We can get more people interested in it. We can improve these habitats so that they're like little oases or clusters within this built-up habitat. And so I think we can do something. And if we had, just looking around the city or any city, there's actually so much you could do to turn it, to bring us a little bit back towards having a more healthy ecology, even though it might be side by side with a skyscraper, for example. I think we can do that. We have no choice, I think, but to do that. We have to try to do that. Otherwise, it is really lost. It's not sustainable. It's certainly not sustainable. So I do see hope in that. And that's kind of what drives me right now. I have my day job, but this is what I like. It's really I never really had a mission in life. It was just to do research and write papers, but now this is really I really feel this is my mission, and to spread all this sort of evangelizing, I suppose, of taking care of what you have left.
Okay. And so that means preserving, how would you say it? Not green spaces, because you're not talking about parks where they're heavily managed. You're actually just talking about having areas that you leave alone. Or what is it that you mean?
One is leave alone. If you can just leave it alone, that's great, because less management. But the parks can be modified so that instead of heavily managed, like manicured lawns, you have a little bit more structure in there, and you serve different purposes. There are people that want to go biking, have picnics and stuff. You have to look at all the people who will use the park. But you can also, the other things that use the park are the animals and the plants. So they should be part of it too. And then in the built spaces where there, say, aren't any parks, you can modify those areas to go back to a little bit of nature and still make it attractive. Along, say, a whole bunch, just in people's houses, right? They can grow certain types of plants that are more conducive to insects and birds. They don't have to have lawns. Or if you go to our industrialized agriculture, which I accept, we have to do that. There's no way we're going to feed 8 billion people by just having artisanal organic farms in each person's backyard. It's not going to work. It has to be mechanized, it has to be industrial, it has to be at this great scale. But we know the impacts, we know the costs of those those things, the destruction to the soils, the pesticide use, the fertilizer use. But what you could do is you could leave a small strip of your big industrial farm as a more natural grassland, right? And in there, you'll preserve some of the original pollinators. And the pollinators aren't just your regular European honeybee. They also include all different types of wasps and flies. And but for those to survive, you need the right soil. You can't keep tilling it. You can't compact it. And once you have those, you can things may come back. Maybe you don't have to use as much pesticides. Use the natural corridor there, or to be your keep your own farm in check. There's this wasp. It's called I think it's called such a cool name. It's called the 5-banded stink bug killer wasp.
Wow. Okay, that's quite a name.
Yeah, I mean that's an awesome name. And what it does is it goes after stink bugs, and stink bugs are real pests. And usually we nuke our farms with pesticides to kill these stink bugs. But this wasp surgically goes after the stink bugs. And if you can keep the wasp, it's great. And what they do is they have a little burrow and they have their babies in there as eggs. And then they go get a stink bug and they catch it and they paralyze it. They don't kill it. They just paralyze it, make it into a zombie, and then dump it into the burrow, and then they seal it, and then they take off. And so it's better than refrigeration. This thing's still alive. And when the eggs hatch, they come up and they're excited and they eat the stink bug. And so they're so efficient at that they will keep these pests at bay. But the key to have these is you have to have flowers that these guys can pollinate. You have to, when they're adults, to feed on, and you have to have the right soil for them to dig in. If you compact it all the time with tractors, they can't dig into the soil. Mm-hmm. So just really little things like that could make a difference. We've seen it in our own little patch here. We allowed some of the soil to kind of come back, and before you know it, we had the 5-banded stink bug killer wasp come back. And nature has its way of maintaining different steady states where nothing really gets out of control, because as we started off, things die, and it's part of the natural cycle, or it has to happen that things die and things are born. So I think there's a lot to be done with what we've got and still allow us to live, and we can still fly to Mars.
Yeah, well, I mean, you always have to keep exploring. Okay, that's great. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Okay, so everyone should go out and fight to preserve what little natural spaces they have left in their cities and towns, and that's a great thing that they can do for sustainability and to share the world with all the rest of the life that lives here. And that's a wrap for this week's episode.
Thank you for listening to Solarpunk Presents,
a podcast hosted and produced by Ariel Kroon and Christina De La Rocha.
The audio for this episode was recorded in part on the traditional territory of the neutral Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples.
And in Germany. The opening and closing music for this podcast is Water Cooler Gang by Monkey Warhol, available for use under the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License.
If you like what we do and want to support the podcast,
join our Patreon at www.patreon.com/SolarpunkPresents,
or share the podcast with friends, family, and people you know who might be interested in our guests and what we have to say. We'd also love it if you could write us a nice review on your podcatcher of choice, because every review bumps us higher in the algorithm's priority, so we can reach more listeners.
Until the next episode,
keep dreaming and keep up the good work.